All right, so we will get this started. Now, I want to start by prefacing this this tonight with, if I can get my PowerPoint up here, prefacing this tonight as, and I am not an Assyriologist. I do consider myself a Bible scholar. I have been, most of my life at this point, even when I was younger, even before I was a believer, I went to Christian school, went to seminary, all these different things to study the Bible. Now, I don't consider myself the best mind in the world in it or anything like that, and so I want to make you guys understand that. But what me and David like to do is we like to take a look at topics that you guys are interested in and that the world is interested in, and we like to go through those topics and study them to the best of our ability for as many hours as we possibly can so that we can present to you an educated opinion about these things. We can show you evidence of different things, and so that we can thoroughly cover a topic that is of relevance for today. And I think this is one of those topics that is relevant. So if you search in the term Return of the Anunnaki on Google or on Amazon, you will come up with any number of books on the subject. There is a man named Zecharia Sitchin who has written multiple books on the subject, right? Even has, I think he has over 15 books on the subject. And there are so many different things. In the Gaia, the New Age religion, there's a huge belief that these beings are the ones who created mankind, the ones who seeded mankind, and they're going to be coming back to claim their dominion once again. So Anunnaki obviously is something that a lot of people are going to be interested in, because this is where the cradle of civilization happened, right? Where all of this stuff is supposed to take place. This is where all the languages come from. This is where all the different races of the world come from. This is where all of the gods, and I use the small word G, gods that are worshipped in the pantheon of almost every religion in the world, come from the religions that grew out of this area. So this is why it's so popular and so mysterious and so important. Now, what I wanted to do first was I wanted to go through all of the books, the cuneiform, all of the things that have been translated that come from that region, from that time, so that I could separate people's beliefs from what actually happened versus what actually is written down in those ancient texts. Now, what I found from those ancient texts is that a lot of them did not disagree with each other. There were contradictions between the texts about the Anunnaki, but yet they all had a very similar story dating them. This is kind of what I found through looking through all of that stuff. They were considered important gods in that time period. They were the ones that people were sacrificed to. All the different things that took place were in reverence to those gods. There are records that contradict each other, but there's a definitive record of their location. So location is something that we do have that is really helps us a lot in trying to determine the nature of the Anunnaki, who they are, what they do. Depending on which book you read, whether it's the Epic of Gilgamesh, I'm drawing a blank here, but the cuneiform tablets that they're written on, all of these different things, you have anywhere from 700 to 900 on them. And also depending on the area that you're in here. So you have anywhere from 700 to 900 members of this. In virtually all of the ancient texts, which this is very different than what most of the New Age scholars would tell you today, but it says they went on to become the gods of the underworld. The most important ones went on to become gods of underworld. They didn't ride on planet Nibiru out of here, right? There's no text that does that. Now, there are texts that mention Nibiru, and we'll talk about that. And on every text is also very proof positive that they did interbreed with humanity. This is how we get these giants and stuff in the Bible. So these are things that are written in ancient times. These are the sources. Now, some of the scholars that went through here, I'm not trying to completely bash Zecharia Sitchin because he was a scholar. You can tell that he was a scholar, but one of the things that really disturbs me about his scholarship is this idea of planet Nibiru. Now, looking into planet Nibiru, looking into what that means, there is a Nibiru mentioned in the ancient text. And I have a video from an Assyriologist, somebody who actually studies these things, and I've looked at many different Assyriologists on Nibiru, and they all have the exact same opinion on what Nibiru is. Now, we're going to watch this quick video. It's not going to take very long, but I think it's important that you guys understand this, because really the biggest problem with Zecharia Sitchin's theory, not the biggest, but one of the biggest problems, is the idea that these beings came in on a planet, their planet kind of collided with Earth, they came here for a while, crossbred, bounced out in Nibiru, and they're taking this huge path around, and they're coming back, right? And when they come back, there's going to be this huge cataclysm. You've heard of the Planet X thing, and this is the theory. Now, being a flat earther, which some of you guys are like, what? Did he just say he's a flat earther? Yes, I believe that the Earth is enclosed in a system. It is the center of the universe, not the sun. I believe that there is a firmament that wraps around this, and I believe there's more to the Earth than we're allowed to know, because there are treaties that we're not allowed to go certain places. I believe that a lot of the things that we've believed over the years can be traced back to deception. And so I believe that. Don't hold it against me if you don't, but just listen to what I have to say here about this planet Nibiru. Listen to what this guy has to say. Dr. David Miano is his name, and very respected in the community of researchers when it has to do this with this time period. As Nibiru is used many, many times in the ancient language. Every single time it is either used as a word for crossover, a crossover point, or a bridge. So every time the word Nibiru is used, it's used to either describe a bridge crossing from one place to another, or a crossing over point. And so a lot of people believe that they may have been talking about portals, they may have been talking about stargates, whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean planet. And when I looked at he has scrolls where he believes that it's the solar system that he found on these scrolls. And me looking at it from a researcher standpoint, a person that is just trying to see what he sees, I don't see a solar system. I don't see that that's possible, that that's what it looks like. It does look like there might be a sun on there, but it doesn't look like any solar system I've ever seen presented in the modern heliocentric theory. So that is interesting to note, because I think a lot of times people truly get sucked into a lot of ideas based on a false idea of the nature of our world. And that's a whole nother show, because we could talk about the deceptions that have taken forth. We could talk about the idea that a Nazi scientist was the one who founded NASA. We could talk about just the different levels of Freemasonry that you have to be in to even be an astronaut. We could talk about all kinds of different things associated with the ideas of what we're led to believe is real about our Earth. But all of them do the same job. And from what I could tell from studying a lot of these ancient cultures, is that their job in these texts were to explain a creation, right? Because you have the myth not the myth. You have the flood in all of this. You have creation. You have all of these gods that are associated with planets, stars, all of these different things, and you have kind of a creation story wrapped up into one. Something Josephus said in I believe it was chapter 4 of Josephus, and this is the second chapter in this. It says, "Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man, and of great strength of hand. He persuaded them not to ascribe it to God, as if this was through his means that they were happy, but to believe that it was their own courage which procured their happiness. He also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God, but to bring them into a constant dependence on his power." Sounds very familiar. He also said that he would be revenged on God if he should have a mind to drown the world again, for that he would build a tower too high for the waters to be able to reach, and that he would avenge himself on God for destroying their forefathers. Now, understand that Nimrod would have been king at the time that these Anunnaki were roaming this area, and we're going to prove that here. Now, I wanted to. Do you have anything you want to add, David, real quick before we go on? I just wanted to. After this, I'm going to discuss kind of the different things that describe these Anunnaki in these texts, and then we're going to a scriptural interpretation of the Anunnaki after this.
Yeah, it's amazing how many things that a biblical belief in biblical cosmology will shield you from. People, so much of the deception that's being forced upon us requires us to believe that space is limitless, and that there is beings out there that are going to come from thousands of light years away. They're going to come and totally transform everything we believed about the origin of mankind and religion and everything. If you believed what the Bible says about cosmology, like John said, the earth being an enclosed system with a firmament, you'll dismiss that and you won't go down the rabbit trail. I found it very interesting when John brought out the meaning of Anunnaki as meaning bridge.
Of Nibiru.
Nibiru.
Yeah.
Nibiru meaning bridge. And this reminded me of what we studied not long ago on a midnight ride in Ezekiel 39:11 and 15. And it says, "And it shall come to pass in that day that I will give unto Gog a place there of graves in Israel, the valley of the passengers." And that word passenger meant to cross over from one place to another. That's the same thing that Nibiru means, a bridge.
Yeah.
And there's definitely a connection there. There's always the godly narrative and there's the pagan narrative. And this is speaking to these little rascals coming right in there.
Yeah, it really is, man. And, you know, the text described them, as you can see in this next PowerPoint, it describes them as having amazing powers. This carving here is a Hittite relief carving at a sanctuary at Hattusa. And this right here is a really cool carving, though, by the way. I was looking at a museum. There's a museum online where they have all of these different seals that they have. It's really cool, and I'll go into more of this in a second, but I was looking at all of the different stuff. So during this time period, especially during Nebuchadnezzar's time period in Babylon, you find the most artifacts. They have these really cool little things that they would carry around their neck, or they would have them on a scepter, and they were seals, and they were a cylinder about, some of them were no more than an inch high. But what they would do is you would take that round cylinder and you would roll it over putty, and it would have a picture, so people would be like, this would be how you would know the king signed this document, because he had his seal on there. It's interesting too, because to note in the Bible it talks about in Song of Solomon, you know, he's like, wear me like the seal about thy neck, or on thy heart, wear thee like the seal on thy heart. And there's an old picture I found of this, and this lady had one of these seals, like holding it against her, right? These seals that she could roll out for like that. So we have so much evidence from this time period. They're described as being very tall and large, these creatures. So there were temples for them all over the land. There were statues built in their honor, and a lot of the stuff that I found too, they almost each one of them kind of had their own cult. So in the cities, these beings would live inside these temples, and they would be worshipped. And when they would pass, or when they would go to the underworld to be gods, which they probably just died, right? They would make idols in their temples to these gods. This is where we get a lot of these gods like Dagon and Baal and all of these different deities, because Baal is actually of the lineage of these Anunnaki, which we'll talk about here in a second. So their location of the Anunnaki, according to legend, according to the books, and also really according to the Bible, once we get into the Bible part of this, you guys will understand what I'm meaning, was all along this area. And so we have the Euphrates River here along the bottom. You have the Tigris River here on the top. Now, this river goes all the way, starts in Turkey, and it goes all the way through the land, all the way to the bottom to where it opens up. This Euphrates River is what sustains this entire area. Without the Euphrates River, Iraq would have to be desolate, right? This would be a completely desolate area. But this was the area where they resided. This is also the area where Abraham came from. This is where Babylon reigned, in this region. And you see that they have encampments all along these areas. You could find evidence of them in Nineveh, Nineveh was a town that they believed was a legendary, unreal town, because the Bible mentioned Nineveh, but nobody had ever found Nineveh, right? They never found Nineveh, so they thought, oh, it's just a Bible fiction. Well, they found it, right? And so they found all of these things as well. You even have temples with these giant steps that looks like only a giant could even enter those steps, with these giant doors. And this would corroborate the idea that the giants actually lived in these temples and were the town hero, right? They were used as the town hero. I truly believe that not only were they used as town hero, that Nimrod, who was the king of Babylon at the time, actually was in charge of them as well. He was the ultimate ruler, the leader of the land, and because of this, he had control over their reigns as well, and were able to have them in towns building and stuff like that. Now, that's a theory. I have no idea. Wasn't there, but I don't know. So now we're going to go to, unless you have something you want to add for David before this, I'd like to go into some scriptures that speak about the Anunnaki, and the Bible calls them Anakim. Did you have anything you wanted to add, David?
Well, something you said was very profound concerning the seal, and the seal is like a mark, and this concept of the marking of the sealing of God's people and the mark upon the evil, there's scripture that ties this into the spiritual realm with the dark side. In Ezekiel chapter 28 and verse 12, speaking of the cherubim that fell, it said, he sealest up the sum. And it speaks of a sealing. And you see this all through on the good side of things and on the bad, that authority.
Yes. Yeah, and from the book of Jasher, it's interesting that Nimrod was actually, according to the book of Jasher, was a righteous king at first, right? Because he gathered all of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and they all served him. And then he turned into this Gibberim, this tyrant, and completely took control of the land. It's an interesting story there. And, there's a lot to that story. Of course, we could do a whole show about that, but this is really interesting, the things that we have going on here and how this all plays into even the governments that we have today, which, like I said, is something that we don't have time to discuss all that right now, but we're going to go through and discuss the scriptures in the Bible that mention these beings. And I believe these are the same beings, not only because they lived in the same area, but they would have been around at the same exact time. Everything is the same about these creatures. They call them the Anakims in the Bible. And it says, and these were basically the sons of Anak. And it says, which also were counted giants as the Anakims, but the Moabites called them Emims. So even in the Bible, you can find Emims in there as well. It says, the Emims dwelt therein in times past, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims. And Joshua 11:22, there was none of the Anakims left in the land of the children of Israel. Only in Gaza and Gath and Ashdod they remain. This is after Joshua and them ran them out of, and killed most of them, and ran them out. And they ran, and this is where you have like Philistines, you have Goliath, etc., going over that area. And then Joshua 14:15, and the name of the Hebron before was, and I'm not going to try to pronounce that, which Arba was a great man among the Anakims, and the land had rest from war. And so it goes on to talk about these sheep. In 9:2 it says they were great and tall. In Deuteronomy 2:21, a people great and many and tall as the Anakims. They were, seen as massive, giant people. In Joshua, they went there to defeat these things, and they said they were as tall as cedars, right? They were huge beings that they were going up against, and they were discouraged, to say the least. But what happened was these beings were in control of the area that God said he was given to the land of Israel, right? He said, I'm giving you this land. You just got to go take it. And, of course, there's these massive giants in this land, like these giant human beings that people still worship to this day, called the Anunnaki, Anakims, that were there in the land. And this is, to me, evidence in the scripture that this is who they were. Now, going into Anak, because these Anakim were actually the descendants of Anak. So they were literal giants that were descendant from Anak. Who is Anak? The Bible is not 100% clear on that. There's a lot that it doesn't talk a whole lot about Anak. If I were to guess, I would say that the guy was maybe possibly a fallen angel that was the leader of them. Now, it's interesting because the name Anak is really close to Enki and all of the different names of the Anunnaki that they're given in the tablets. And the ones that survived these tablets, you'll like this, David, the ones that survived, these gods that survived according to the cuneiform tablets, were the ones that were water gods. And so this is interesting because if you think about, the Bible says he destroyed all the breath off the face of the earth. So is it possible that only the Nephilim or the angels that were associated with water were the ones that survived, and then they repopulated there in the Mesopotamian area, which I think is highly possible. And I'm just going to read this, and then I'll get a comment. I want a comment from you, David. And it says, and there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in their sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. And so we were in their sight. This is interesting. So, like, and I don't know if he's just saying, man, you know, these things are freaking huge. We look like grasshoppers to them, or if they literally were like grasshoppers in their sight. Judging by a lot of the pictures that I see of these beings, they were huge. They possibly were literally like grasshoppers in some of their sight. I mean, you have some of them with pictures of them carrying around a full-grown lion like it's a kitten. So yeah, they were pretty big men.
Yeah, in Job chapter 26 and verse 5, it certainly would validate that which we see there in these texts. It says dead things, and that word dead there is Rephaim, which is another word that was translated giant. Dead things are formed from under the waters, and the inhabitants thereof.
Yeah.
Now, that just, what else could that mean but just what we're talking about?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and that could explain 100% how the giants made it across the deluge. You know, that's really the only way, other than off in a spaceship in Nibiru, like Zechariah Stitchin says, or whatever, you know. And, you know, Sodom and Gomorrah was at the same time as all of this. This was the same area. Nimrod was still around while Abraham and Lot were swirling the area, right? He was, when Abraham went to the battled the kings, these were some of the kings that were around during this time. And so Sodom and Gomorrah also had a history of genetic manipulation as well. Can you speak to that, David? Because I was going to actually have a slide about that, but I didn't. I knew that you did an entire show about the genetic manipulation at Sodom. And let's keep it PG-13 here. But
yeah, and we did a complete midnight ride about the true story of Sodom, which got very graphic. We had to do a Rumble show on that. But it is confirmed in non-canonical text and in the Gnostic version of their Savior that Sodom and Gomorrah was the place after the flood where the Nephilim returned and began to flourish again and begin to interbreed with the human race. And we did an entire show on that. And there's very much in Scripture and in non-canonical writings that would point to that very thing.
Yeah, I mean, this would have been like at the same exact time period as all of this stuff was going on here, you know.
And also, too, after the Battle of the Kings, there was Melchizedek.
Yeah.
So this is also everything we talked about last week. This is all from the same place, same time.
Yep.
And the spiritual impact from this, we're still feeling it.
That's so true. Yeah, and this is out of all the different areas that there were probably beings like this is the most popular, because this is literally where all the language just came from. This is where all of our ancestry originally came from, is that area. No other area. Now we have these things, you know, these serpent gods that you talked about in the show that we did, the reptilian show, that were all over the world, right? Especially in America, you have them everywhere. Like this is the land. America means the land of the plumed serpent, but these beings are over here. These are kind of the ones that we all somehow connect to in a way, because they were around at the time of all of our ancestors. This is where the entire cradle of civilization of the world happened after the flood. That's what I believe anyway, and I think
you're absolutely right there, John. Absolutely right.
And so I'm going to read out of this book. This is a handbook of gods and goddesses of the ancient Near East, and I'm going to page 25 here. Give me 1 second. And we're going to read about the Anunnaki in this book. And okay, so let me read this. It says this says it's a group of Sumerian Akkadian gods, the 7 judges of the netherworld. As early as dynastic times appear as the class of gods in Sumerian and Akkadian myths from Ebla. Later on, the term came to mean deities of earth and the netherworld. as opposed to the Igigi, the divinities of heaven. The sky god An was king of the Anunnaki. Sometimes as Eridu, they numbered as many as 50. And so you have this idea about them, like An. This is interesting too, because associated with all of the different religions of the time, like Egypt, for instance, you have these similar gods that represent the same exact things in that time, and even in Roman gods and Greek gods, they all have the same purpose. These gods, but all have a different name because the languages shift at the time, and a lot of these deities were associated with the sun, the moon, the stars, Venus, etc. I mean, this is where you have Ishtar, this is where you have Inannu, this is where you have all of these different gods, and even Baal is the descendant of one of these entities, according to a book that I'm going to show you guys here in a minute. And then I'm just going to go on to read here. It says, in the myth of Etana, the Anunnaki were said to declare the fates. At the end of the law code of Hammurabi of Babylon, they were addressed as the mighty gods of heaven and earth, and were called upon to carry out curses. The death of Gilgamesh recounts how the hero made offerings before his death to all the main gods among them, and Nunu gods of the Holy Mound, the Duku king, their primeval home. In the Sumerian composition, the descent of Inanna, when Inanna appears before them in the throne room of her netherworld sister, they turn on her the look of death, that she became a corpse hanging on a peg. A possible meaning of the name Anunnaki is princely seed. The Anunnaki were worshipped among other places at Babylon and Ashur. Anunnaki, borrowed from Mesopotamian, was used in Hurrian Hittite material to refer to deities who lived in the netherworld, probably the same as the Hittite primeval gods. And so you have this civilization of this. I think it's interesting that it's mentioned in the Hammurabi Code, also in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Now, going to, the Epic of Gilgamesh is interesting. Now, I think that a lot of it is myth told in a story, but out of all the kings that are listed, so you can, to prove that somebody was even around, there's only like 3 ways you can really prove that. One has to be a historical record. You have a written text. 2, archaeological evidence, and maybe 3, physical evidence of some sort, right? You have to have a body. But the problem is bodies, you won't find bodies that old unless it's a mummy, right? Because mummies are the only ones that are actually preserved in the bodies. I was looking at how old can a body be before when you can actually find it and kind of determine who it is. And unless it's mummified, you will never know, right? You'll never know whose body is what. But one thing I found interesting about Gilgamesh, which is unlike a lot of these other sun kings and all of that, he's actually mentioned in tablets as a real king in that area. He is said to be 2/3 God, 1/3 man. He was a tyrant of sorts in himself, kind of did things. One of the guys that he talks to, and I don't have the name in front of me, but he calls him the one that was around before the flood. It's basically like a Noah figure, right? He's talking to Noah, like, how can I live forever? Like, how can I do all these things? And Noah, it's like, you're going to have to go all the way to the bottom of the ocean and get that flower from the Garden of Eden. He's like, that's the only way you're going to do it, right? So they have these stories going on inside of here. But there are, seals with Gilgamesh on them. There's a lot of proof of that. So I would say that there is archaeological evidence and written evidence of Gilgamesh, which that's what makes it interesting to me. Gilgamesh is probably a legitimate person, and he was around about the exact same time as Nimrod. Some people believe Marduk was Nimrod. Some people believe a lot of different gods were Nimrod. I'm not 100% sure, but it looks like his time period would have been in the exact time period of Nimrod, which is interesting.
Yeah. These stories, and it's interesting, in Isaiah chapter 23, in verse 13, it says, "Behold, the land of the Chaldeans, this people was not till the Assyrian founded it." And this powerful demonic entity, it founded this whole area. And when the fallen ones came down, who were just the fallen angels, Genesis 6, and their offspring were worshipped as gods.
Yeah.
And the stories, we have the prototype. When we see here the Babylonian records, it's Mystery Babylon after all. And here we have the prototype, and as these stories were told and retold, the little bit of the details are different, but you see the same basic story throughout.
Yes.
And in Scripture, we have the understanding of what's going on here, and it's real. It's a real clear picture, and it's amazing how everything we see in secular education wants to suppress this.
Yeah.
In our area, in the 1800s, there were literally hundreds of mounds that were excavated and giants pulled out of these mounds.
Yep.
The Smithsonian comes in, buys them up, suppresses it.
Yep.
Literally, there are hundreds of newspaper articles of giant bones in the Ohio River Valley.
Yeah, there's a whole book. What's that book that the man put together? I can't remember the guy's name that wrote it, but he put together a book about all the giants in North America and all the newspaper clippings.
Yeah.
What is that called?
Well, and I know in one of L.A. Marzulli's books, there's hundreds and the actual copies of the articles in it.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's not just one or two, there's hundreds of them.
Yeah. Yeah, they really are. And this is, it's interesting because they found a lot of these, these giant mummies and stuff as well associated with Tartaria and all of that. This all ties into this, and this is,
sure does.
It's really, really interesting. So here in this book right here, this is Realm of the Ring Lords by Lawrence Gardner. Now, if you were to see this book on the shelf, you would think this is a fiction book written by some science fiction guy, whatever, but the Lawrence Gardner was a 33rd degree Freemason. He was director of Scottish Antiquities, and he was also a genealogist for the Kings. Really respected man. Not, the cover doesn't do the book justice, but in this you'll see a chart here to your left, and this is they call it the Anunnaki and the Dragon Queens. Now, when you look at here, you have all the way at the top, you have Lord of the Waters, right? You have this, and you have these different dragon queens. You go down, you've got Marduk, all the way down to Baal. Right, the finger's covering up down here at the bottom, but you can see Baal in this.
I can see Baal.
Yes, and so the belief about this stuff is the reason that you see kingships interbreeding for years, right? They interbreeded so many times is because their descendants came from these groups. They believe that anyway, right? This is their belief that they descended from these Anunnaki, and they have their lineage that goes way back to this time. They believe the more Anunnaki blood you have, and this is even in the old text, the more powerful you are. So the more Anunnaki blood gives you more right to reign. It also gives you more power. To this day, they hold this sacred. This is why royal families marry royal families. This is why the Rothschild family bought their way into getting that blood and being a part of their family, right? This is why you have people that do anything they can to achieve nobility because they want to receive this Anunnaki blood that rains down. This gives you the authority to rule. This entire book is basically tells us how we get the different names for different mythological characters such as elves, dwarfs, all of these different creatures that we would think are mythological. But one thing that they brought out in this book was interesting to me is that the Anunnaki, they came from, according to the book, is the El, right? They're an El, which El is El in the Bible, and the Bible calls them Elohim, or El is an actual god, a false god, right? El. And they mean shining ones. This is what I've found through several scholars. They believe this. Now, I don't know how some of the guys are more excited about it than others and the way the stuff they found, but they believe that they're shining ones. And this is what the elves are represented as. So elf, where we get our word elite, elite, they are children of the El, children of the Elohim, children of the shining ones. We also have Lucifer described as one of the shining ones, right? We have all of these different things, but this is, according to this book, this is where we get this. Now, when you look at a book like, or look at a movie like Lord of the Rings, it seems like it's depicting the exact same thing this guy's talking about. And in a way it is, because you have these elves that are basically immortal, right? They have these dwarves that mine for them, get them things that sustain their life. They have humans that they've helped create this massive, beautiful city that's like Atlantis. They have all of these different things going on to represent exactly what we're talking about here. But fiction has a way of, science fiction has a way of delegitimizing the reality of things purposefully. I think, because they don't want us to understand the reality of all this stuff yet until it's time. I think that most people that are in the know about this stuff know that this stuff happened. They understand that this is where our humanity came from. This is where the cradle of civilization happened, and there's a lot that happened in the last few thousand years that we don't understand, and the idea of us finding out about this frightens them, right? So the shows like this and ideas that empower people to understand the roots of humanity, the roots of where we're from, definitely scare them. David, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, I think probably one of the most popular TV series in modern time in pop culture was the not Lord of the Rings, but not Dragon Queen. What am I?
Harry Potter, maybe?
No, the Dragon.
Oh, yes, Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, thank you. Yeah, the Game of Thrones. And now there's a sequel to it, I guess, that's come out, that they're running the sequel to it. And there on the list that you had up there it talked about the Great Dragon Lady, Yeah. But we did a show not long ago about the reptilians. And the reptilians, this is the Genesis 6 scenario. And when the seraphim tricked the fallen angels to mating with human women, the way that they did it was by taking on reptilian form. And this whole genre of, and Mr. Gardner's very specific of things that would be too even uncomfortable to talk about, the perverse things that they did to keep their bloodline pure. And it's always the Great Dragon Lady. And it all is pointing back to this seminal episode where the reptilians began to inbreed with women, and the Dragon Lady, it's just all pictured there.
Yeah.
It's all just a picture of this whole thing,
yeah.
And it's popularized.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is, and it's amazing to me, too, that how good they are at kind of just putting it in your face, or it's not, they don't really put it in your face, it's in your face, because you see every single civilization had these beings that they worshipped sacrifice people. You see it everywhere, in every part of the world, yet for some reason, we just can't believe that it's possible that it happened, right? Even though there's mass evidence all over the place stating that it happened, history stating that these things happen, yet for some reason, we can't believe it. And I think that's part of the problem with Disney and associations like that, Marvel and stuff, because they make it so fantastical to where it's like, oh, this isn't real. You're talking about a movie here, John. David, you're talking about a movie, a superhero movie. This isn't real. Most children have watched superhero movies, but I would say most children haven't read the Bible, and this is why I think it needs to be brought out. Now, going on with this subject here, so one of the reasons I think that this is so important with the Anunnaki is because there is a reality to the possibility that they are the ones who are coming back, right? They are coming back, and so this will legitimize a lot of New Age theories. Now we're going to look at why. What does the Bible say about them and about them coming back? Is this talking about them? We're going to discuss that because I don't know 100%. All I know is this is what the scriptures say. So we're going to start here in Revelation 9:14. It says, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. Now we have this angel, the sixth angel. Revelation 16 describes the same event, the sixth angel, and we're going to read this, 16:12. And the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Now, I'm just going to read a few of these verses. I'm going to stop here for a second. So you have this idea in Revelation 9 and Revelation 16. A sixth angel pours out a vial. Euphrates is dried up, is what one verse says. Then you have the other one says that there's four angels who are unbound. Now, interestingly enough, for those of you that don't know this, there is the river is drying up right now in the Euphrates, very much so, to the point to where it's staggering to see what has happened. Now, you have another thing you say. It says in Revelation 16:12 that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. Now, I'm going to read this one more verse, and I'm going to show you guys a map because I want you guys to kind of see what we're looking at here. What are we describing? What's going on? And it says, "And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth into the kings of the earth, and the whole world to gather to battle of that great day of God Almighty." So you have these fallen angels being unchained. You have these angels that have been chained down there since the beginning of time, beginning of humanity, been chained down there, being unleashed. You have 3 unclean spirits that look like frogs going to deceive the kings and to gather them to battle. Now, this is a map here, and I drew this in because on the map it's hard to see the river because it's being so dried up, so they don't even show it going all the way through. But this is where the Euphrates River starts up here in Turkey. It goes all the way down through Syria, all the way down through Iraq, and out through Kuwait into the Persian Gulf. Now, if this river were to dry up, everything you see from Syria down through the middle of Babylon, through the middle of Iraq, would be uninhabitable. Completely uninhabitable to the point to where there would be no water for anybody to live. There would be nothing for them to graze. There would be none of that. So when it says that it prepares or gives the kings of the east room, think about this. What is in the east of this? You have Iran, right? You have all of these different stands after that, Turkestan, all these different stands which denote Muslim territory. But this is, with Babylon, Iraq out of the way, you have complete access for Iran to come right through here and completely go into the other side of this area and come right through and go over to Israel, which is, we're going to have the Battle of Armageddon. This is what's going to happen. You have at the top here, this is what's interesting going on right now. Turkey is actually actively fighting Iraq right now. They have problems going back and forth, and Iran is as well. They have these, the people in Iraq are mad because they believe Turkey is withholding their water and not allowing the water to pass through. So they're in a fight with them, and they're also in a fight with Iran. Here's a couple of news articles that I found here. One dead after Iran unleashed missile and drone strike on Iraq's trigger brutal fireball. Iran escalates fight, exiled Kurdish opposition in Iraq. And obviously, like I said before, Turkey is joining forces with Iran on this as well, which is interesting, I think, because considering some of the verses that I'm going to talk about. Did you have anything you wanted to add, David?
No, go right ahead.
Okay, so this next verse here is in Jeremiah chapter 50. It says, "The word that the Lord spake against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet, declare ye among the nations, and publish and set up a standard. Publish and conceal not. Say Babylon is taken, Bel is confused. Marduk, I've been reading too many of the Syrian tablets. Merodach is broken into pieces," which I believe he's talking about Marduk here. "Her idols are confounded, her images are broken in pieces. For out of the north there shall come a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate." Now, does that not think about Turkey? If they're the ones shutting off the water, they're definitely making the land desolate. "And none shall dwell therein. They shall remove, they shall depart, both man and beast." Going on in Jeremiah 50 and verse 38, "A drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up. For the land is the land of graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. Therefore the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the island shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein, and it shall be no more inhabited forever, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation." Now, we know this is talking about a future time because it is inhabited right now, but this is the future of that area, right? So what we're seeing here could be that. Like, it really literally could be the start of the drying up the Euphrates. The vial may be getting started. He may be dripping it in the river. We don't know exactly, but it's worth bringing out and talking about because this is a significant event that will literally take Iraq out of the picture 100%. Now, one of the biggest bases that we have as America is in Iraq. Yeah. We have one of the biggest bases that we have anywhere, billions of dollars, trillions of dollars worth of base in that area. And so I don't know what that means for America, but I know what it means for the rest of the world. It means all-out war, right? I mean, this is like prime territory for here. And I got this little video here that just, I don't know if our sound's still working, but I can play the video. But it's talking about the Euphrates River drying up and how the Iraqi people are blaming Turkey. But what the problem is, Turkey says that their water levels are decreasing to a level that they can't hardly let any more flow out. It's just decreasing so much. They can't do anything about the decrease in the river, which I believe what they're saying is true, because you can look at their water levels; they're a lot lower. But the Euphrates that travels all the way through in some spots is completely dry. There are reports of people actually finding lost places underneath these rivers. Now, until I see an archaeologist report for sure where these locations are, I don't know where they're at, but around the Tigris and Euphrates, they've actually been finding underground caverns and cities and tombs and everything underneath the Euphrates River, which is interesting, underneath the Tigris as well, which tells me that at one time the landscape was a little bit different. There was something else going on there that we may not know about. But could this be where these angels are chained, is underneath that? And if so, is this the point to where we find them?
Yeah, it very much is, and these prophecies are very much tied to location. The location and the area here is what it is because of ancient entities, and they're going to be back, according to Scripture, to play a role. This is huge.
Yeah.
This is absolutely huge, this drying up the Euphrates River.
Yeah.
It is just a 10 on the Richter scale for Bible prophecy.
Yes. Yeah, and that's one that's hard to miss too. Once you see it happen, it's kind of hard to miss. There was another article that I forgot to put up here, but Turkey and Iran attacked Kurdish areas in Syria and Iraq. So they're already preparing for battle, right? They're already trying to run them out of there anyway. So the water dying out is just going to be cake on the icing for them to take over the north and the east. And that's really interesting, because that's exactly what the Bible says. The land of the north will cause them to be desolate. The kings of the east will be wanting to come. And it talks even further in Enoch, right? So Revelation 9 says, "And there were 4 angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year." So for a year and a month, and a day and an hour, they were preparing to slay 1/3 of the part of men. So who are these entities that are chained underneath the Euphrates? Now, I don't know for sure. I'm just going to go through a few texts, Enoch, etc., and see. But before I do that, David, did you have anything you wanted to add to what I was talking about there?
Well, if people want to read in Revelation chapter 8, there are judgment of thirds all through there. 1/3 of the trees, 1/3 of the grass, 1/3 of the creatures in the sea. And this seems to be the judgment, and it's interesting that Mount Hermon is on the 33rd degree parallel.
Yes.
And of course we had 33 kings that were subdued by Moses, 33 pagan kings, Freemasonry. This is just looms so huge in unpacking our understanding of everything that is going to unfold spiritually and prophetically.
Yes. Well, we've been doing a Book of Enoch video commentary, folks, and it's been one of the biggest blessings. The Book of Enoch was one of the biggest blessings of any book that I've ever read, other than the Bible. I remember the first time I read the Book of Enoch, and now I'm talking about Enoch 1. There's 2 and 3 that you can tell are not written by the same author, not authentic. The first Book of Enoch is very authentic, and I believe written by the prophet Enoch, right? Written by Enoch, the 5th from Adam, or the 7th from Adam. Seventh from Adam. And this is what is written about some angels who happen to be chained up around that area. It says, "Thou seest what Azazel had done, who had taught all unrighteousness on earth, and revealed the eternal secrets which were preserved in heaven," which men were striving to learn. So men were already striving to learn these secrets, right? "And Semyaza, to whom thou hast given authority to bear rule over his associates, and they have gone to the daughters of men upon the earth, and have slept with the women, and have defiled themselves, and revealed to them all kinds of sin. And the women have borne giants, and the whole earth has therefore been filled with blood and unrighteousness. And now behold, the souls of those who have died are crying and making their suit to the gates of heaven, and their lamentations have ascended and cannot cease because of the lawless deeds which are wrought on earth." Now, this is the same story that we hear in the Bible in Genesis 6. Sons of God came to the daughters of men. and there were Nephilim in the earth in those days, right? This is what happened in the Bible. This is what we see happening in the tablets, in all of these ancient tablets about the Anunnaki. They decided to interbreed with women, right? This is what happened, and this is interesting because this is post-flood, and this all stuff happened before the flood as well. But this is one of the angels that associated with these Anunnaki. Somehow these Anunnaki came from these angels somewhere or another, okay? These are the ones that started all this, and this is why their judgment had to come. Now, this verse here in Enoch 10 talks about the binding of Azazel. And it says, "And again the Lord said to Raphael, bind Azazel hand and foot, and cast him into darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is Dudael, and cast him therein. And place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the day of the great judgment he shall be cast into the fire, and heal the earth with the angels have corrupted, and proclaim the healing of earth, that they may be healed the plague, and that all the children of men may not perish through all secret things which the watchers have disclosed and taught to their sons." Now, this is Azazel. Now, there was another group of angels bound as well in Enoch chapter 10. And this is the one that I believe is possibly what we're looking at here. It says, "And the Lord said unto Michael, Go bind Semyaza and his associates who have united themselves with women, so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanliness. And when their sons have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valley of the earth, till the day of their judgment and their consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated." So you have these Semyaza and his associates that were bound for 70 generations. Interestingly enough, we've calculated, David, and we're pretty stinking close to 70 generations, which is pretty profound as well.
Yes.
Enoch chapter 56 goes on to say in verse 5, "And in those days the angels shall return and hurl themselves to the east upon the Parthians and the Medes." Isn't that exactly what Revelation said, right? The kings of the east are going to be coming down on them. And it says, "They shall stir up the kings, so that the spirit of unrest shall come upon them. And they shall rouse them from their thrones, that they may break forth as lions from their lairs, and as hungry wolves among their flocks." What do you think about that, David?
Well, we've talked about this previously on Midnight Riot, and we coordinated this passage in Enoch 56 with 2nd Esdras, Daniel 11. It's confirmed inside and out that there's going to be an invasion of Israel from this area, from Iran. And it coordinates, according to the book of Enoch, with the return of the 200. And we're going to see here 4 big guys. And I think at this time we'll see the opening of the pit, Revelation 9, and the removal of the restrainer. It's going to be absolutely crazy. And I think we're already seeing the first drippings. I think the bottomless pit is leaking. It's what I think. And I think we're having entities that we're dealing with now in the spiritual realm that we've never dealt with before. Mm-hmm. And this is just going to escalate. And it's really exciting times to live in. It really is. Nothing to be afraid of. It's an exciting time. It's a call to battle for the people of God.
Yeah.
It's a call to battle.
Yeah, and I think that it's so important that we understand what is going on when we see it, because, there's a lot of predictive programming that's been going on throughout our entire lives, for as far as I can remember, and David too, right? Way back, we've had predictive programming of the possibility of aliens returning, the possibility of these superheroes returning to save mankind or to destroy whatever is going to happen. We've had this predictive programming through Hollywood, through UFOlogy, through stories of people encountering demonic activity, all of these different things, and even to the extent of a whole ancient aliens theory created based off the Anunnaki, based off this idea that these men from space came and left, and then they're coming back. This is something that more people have heard of, I believe, than the idea that there are literally giants coming to fulfill the wrath of God, according to Isaiah 13, right? Giants are coming to fulfill my wrath. And so we want to make that loud and clear. There are giants coming to fulfill his wrath, and they are going to hurl themselves upon the earth, and they are going to kill 1/3 of mankind. They're not benevolent. They're not your friend. They're there to do some damage, so stay away from them if you can.
Yeah. And this is summed up under the heading of the judgment of God. And these very much are going to be the executors of the judgment, and it's going to be well-deserved, and it's going to be ugly.
Yes.
It's nothing going to be pretty about this. It's gonna be ugly.
Yeah. So, speaking of ugly, this video I'm going to show you guys now. This, I have no idea of knowing if this is authentic. There's no way I can know this, right? There's a guy that said that he filmed it, and he's over by the Euphrates River, and he had a camera, and he was filming this and this noise. To me, it sounds like something out of Jurassic Park. I have no idea, but it is a little frightening when you hear it. So I'm going to urge, if we can get the sound going, that if you have young children in the room, that if they are easily scared by stuff, or even not just easily, they're scared. I wouldn't want my kids probably listening to it either. Then maybe have them close their ears or leave the room during this time. But this is said to have been filmed from a noise coming from underneath the Euphrates River. Now, take it for what it is. We have no idea 100%, but this is going around as that millions of views, and people are taking it seriously. So let's listen to it. And tell me what I would like to know what you guys think in the chat. Let me know if you guys think it's real in the comments. And if you guys have any more information on it, I'm trying to figure out a way to authenticate it. One of the reasons I didn't show some of the other videos is because I have no way to authenticate if they found those things in Euphrates or Tigris, right? So I think we want to be really clear. This is supposedly done. So we're going to play it. Here we go. Sounds like a dinosaur, or like somebody groaning, like that, just groaning, and weird, triple noise voice and all that. I'll let you see what that is. Yeah, it's like a crack in the ground. Puts his hand down there for size reference, but no idea if this is real or not, It was shot. We're playing it so that it's kind of creepy. But it was shot roughly 5 months ago, I believe. That's all I could find out 100% about it. Wow. And of course, the guy claiming that's where he filmed that at. But yeah, it's interesting, man. This is if there are angels underneath there, which I believe there are. Can you only imagine what they sound like, David? Imagine what they're doing, how pissed off they are that they've been chained up for 1,000 years, probably underwater to this point.
Yeah.
Golly.
Yeah, it's what can you say?
Yeah.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. We know that one of the things that's really interesting, too, about a lot of our studies, we found that underneath the grounds, in the earth, there are, according to the scripture, things living inside the earth. There are empty caverns inside the earth that go for a long ways. The earth has a hollow earth existence, right? There's things inside that maybe some people have gone to, but none of us have understand, right? None of us have been there yet to see what is going on there. But all I can say is this, guys: supernatural things, I believe, are coming. The world is going to see it through the eyes of what they've been shown. I think it's very important that in this time period we show people the possibilities of what God says, right? Show them the truth about what God says about these things. Otherwise, they're going to be deceived. Now is a good time, not when people are panicking. When people are panicking, it's too late. You can't listen and learn when you're panicking. I remember I had a dream one time, and in the dream, everything was chaotic. The whole world was ending, right? And I went to go grab my Bible. This was before I was a believer. I went to grab my Bible by my bed, and all I could hear was "too late." It's too late. When the stuff goes down, it's too late. You have to get ready for these things.
And when these things begin to happen, the world will have an explanation to explain this, but it's not going to be the right one. It reminds me, last week we read from the Nag Hammadi codices about the return of the bad Melchizedek, and he come back as the heavenly messenger. It says, "Greetings, Melchizedek." It's like, "Hello, space brother."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The Pope talking about baptizing aliens when they come. The stage is being set, and the government has been disclosing files on UFOs. They know that there's things going on. Men were sent to Antarctica, killed underneath Admiral Byrd's command. Ice crushing ships have been there. They documented walls. There's a lot going on that we don't know about, guys. I mean, this is just the reality of things. Of course, they're not going to tell everybody everything. The whole goal of the one that is in charge of our Earth, as this point, who has the world deceived, that's his whole goal, is to deceive you, right? This is the whole goal. And with control of education, with control of media, with control of all of the religious systems, they don't have any problem doing that. But they do have a problem with those that break forth, those that find their way out of the matrix, those that see the light and run towards it. They have a problem with those kind of people. Just like in the movie Matrix, if you aren't in the matrix and they can tell that you're going against the flow, they don't like you, right? The world doesn't like you. That's why the Bible says that the world, if you're an enemy, or if you're a friend of the world, you're enemy of God. Because the world will not stand for this. And I'm not talking about everybody in the world. Obviously, there's us out here that enjoy the presence of each other. But the people who are in charge of the world, they will not tolerate this.
Yeah.
They will not allow people into positions of power or stardom who are not controlled. You guys all saw Kanye's, maybe you didn't, I don't know if you saw this or not, David, but Kanye, he's been speaking out regularly recently. Mm-hmm. The other day he tweeted a picture, it was a screenshot of a text between him and his handler, the guy that supposedly his trainer and friend, I guess, but the guy says that he's going to put him in Zombieland again. He's going to put him back in the mental hospital if he doesn't shut up.
Wow.
And this is he tweeted it out.
I didn't see that.
This is the reality of these guys. This is what they deal with. They are controlled, and if they speak out, something bad happens. But thankfully, we're not controlled. They don't like us. You can tell, but we are not controlled, and we are able to speak. Thank God. Praise the Father for that. You are not controlled. You are able to speak. Do it. If all of us little people speak out and speak about things, there's nothing they can do to stop us. Even if they got all the big dogs in control, even if they got leashes on all the actors, there's still us out there. And so I encourage you guys to somehow speak the truth to people, even if it's just small ways, even if it's just loving them enough to let them know, look, there's something else out there. There's truth out there to be found, and I want to share this with you. Just simple stuff like that. And, sometimes you can't talk to people until you're friends with them or whatever, but just make sure that people understand this, especially if you have family that don't understand what the reality of things are or what they could be. At least let them hear it. I really would appreciate that for each and every one of you to do that. I think that it would really help our world that we're living in. I know a lot of people don't ever ask people to do that. They want you to go argue with people or call them crazy. I don't want you to do that. I want you to go out and love people. I want you to go out and teach them the truth. And I want you to go out and show them what it means to be a child of God, what it means to be one. Not just what everything says. You can go on and say all these things, but if you're a jerk, you're a jerk, right? Jerks that's all fake, right? We got to do the best we can to be the real children of God. What does the Bible have us do as a children of God? We go out and we defend the weak, we protect the widow, we protect those, we love people, we do things that are a blessing to those around us. So I encourage you guys to do that, and I just want to say there are many things we could say on the subject, and I'm sure we will do more as time goes on, but I appreciate you guys listening. David, that's all I got tonight, man.
Well, I think that's fantastic, John, and